Every woman makes one mistake, a predictable crack in her psychological armor, and those who understand this flaw in human nature gain an advantage that others never see. In this video, we expose that mistake, not to exploit cruelty, but to understand the silent mechanics of power that govern desire, attachment, and influence. Human behavior is rarely noble. Behind every gesture of affection lies a secret calculation. Behind every expression of vulnerability, an unspoken fear. Women, like men, are not exempt from this truth, yet they often disguise it beneath emotion, expectation, and hope. Machiavelli taught that the world moves not by ideals, but by weakness, ambition, and the illusions people cling to. Tonight, we enter the darker corridors of psychology to observe how a single, recurring mistake shapes the balance of power between men and women. This is not romance. This is not kindness. This is strategy. The kind that reveals what people do when they believe no one is watching. And once you see this pattern, you can never unsee it. There is a peculiar error woven into human emotion, and women, though often praised for intuition, are not immune to it. They frequently assume that the force they feel within themselves must also shape the intentions of others. Yet emotion is not a compass. It is a fog, and when one moves through fog, one sees only illusions and calls them truth. Consider the rulers of old who trusted their feelings above calculation. Their kingdoms fell not because their hearts were weak, but because their certainty blinded them to the quieter movements of ambition around them. People who believe their emotions are universal fail to notice when others are guided by entirely different motives, and so they become predictable even when they imagine themselves mysterious. Ask yourself this. How many times have you assumed that someone felt as deeply as you did, simply because their gestures resembled your own hopes? The mind projects its desire outward, painting others with colors borrowed from its private longings. Women often fall into this habit when they grow attached, believing emotion creates symmetry. Yet human intention is rarely symmetrical. It bends, distorts, and hides in shadows where sentiment cannot reach. History is filled with examples. A queen misreads loyalty as love, unaware that her trusted advisor serves not her heart, but his own rising star. A noble woman confuses admiration with devotion, never noticing the quiet calculations behind every flattering smile. Emotion makes her certain, but certainty dulls caution, and where caution fades, those who navigate by reason alone gain silent ground. Psychology reveals the same pattern in modern life. When emotion surges, the brain seeks coherence, not truth. It stitches narratives from fragments and calls them certainty. A woman may assume that her intensity must be mirrored, that her affection must provoke equal warmth, that her fear of loss must be shared. But emotion is not contagious by default. It spreads only when the other person chooses to inhale it half. You noticed how people often reveal more when they believe their emotions define the interaction? They expose expectations, timelines, priorities. They speak as though the other party is already aligned with them. But alignment born from assumption is the quickest route to disappointment. Those who assume emotional symmetry step forward boldly, unaware that the ground beneath them belongs to someone capable of stepping back. Think of the strategist who governs not by passion, but by observation. He listens while others proclaim. He watches while others reveal. And he measures the distance between what someone feels and what they intend. That gap, invisible to the emotional thinker, becomes clear to the one who refuses to be swept by sentiment. In that distance lies influence, not through force but through clarity. Women who assume emotional certainty often fail to see when someone maintains a divided mind, one part engaged, another calculating. They read warmth as commitment, attention as investment, consistency as devotion. Yet human behavior is layered, and people frequently act from convenience, curiosity, or self-interest. Emotion simplifies what is actually complex, and in doing so strips away the depth required to perceive what truly moves another. In relationships, this mistake becomes a quiet architect of imbalance. One person moves with feeling, the other with distance. One interprets gestures as signals, the other as options. And so tension forms between expectation and reality. The emotionally certain party becomes unsettled not because the other misled them, but because they never questioned the assumptions they carried into the connection. To see this clearly is to reclaim your sight from the fog. You begin to notice how often people react not to truth, but to the stories they tell themselves about others. You see how certainty forms chains, binding the one who believes too deeply in the universality of their feelings, and and you start to understand that power belongs not to the cold or the cruel, but to the perceptive, those who watch without presumption. So ask yourself, if emotion creates illusions, what lies behind them? And more importantly, what will you discover when you step into the next layer of the psychological design, where the need for validation reveals an even sharper truth? Prepare to see without illusions ahead. The desire to be validated is one of the oldest weaknesses in human nature. Women, like all people, often long to feel chosen, admired, and confirmed in their worth. Yet this longing, when revealed too early or too openly, becomes a quiet surrender of authority. Those who need to be seen are always at the mercy of those who choose when to look. Reflect for a moment. How many decisions in your life have been shaped not by logic, but by the subtle hunger to be acknowledged? That ache pushes people to reveal themselves, to adjust their behavior, to soften their boundaries, hoping to gain approval from someone whose attention they cannot control. This need creates a power imbalance before either person even realizes it exists. History is littered with rulers and won by their craving for admiration. One monarch, praised for her beauty and grace, surrounded herself with courtiers who showered her with flattery. She felt secure because she felt adored. Yet those same voices whispered different loyalties outside her chamber walls. Her downfall was not orchestrated through force, it was crafted through her desire to be celebrated. The more she sought validation, the more predictable she became, and the more easily others steered her decisions to suit their ambitions. Validation does not simply expose weakness, it signals it. When someone reveals that your approval shapes their emotions, they inadvertently hand you a lever with which to influence their choices. In psychological terms, this is called dependency formation. In Machiavellian terms, it is the moment someone places their emotional stability into another's hands and assumes that hand will hold it gently. But ask yourself this: how often do people truly respect what they can easily sway? Those who need validation rarely appear powerful. They bend, they explain, they seek reassurance, and each time they do, they reveal what they fear, what they desire, and what they cannot bear to lose. Women who crave validation often unveil their intentions long before the other person has revealed theirs. They interpret attention as security. They interpret romantic interest as triumph. And in that rush of perceived victory, they begin giving away more than they receive. They adjust their tone, their availability, their ambitions. They shape themselves according to what they believe will maintain admiration. Yet admiration earned through self-abandonment is always unstable. For the moment you begin performing for another's approval, you cease acting from your own will. You become, in essence, controlled by the audience you hope to please. Consider a modern example. A woman meets someone who offers her warmth and charm. She grows attached, but instead of observing his behavior, she tries to win his continued interest. She texts more quickly. She initiates more often. She worries when the reply is slow. Her behavior is no longer strategic, it is reactive. Her need to feel chosen overshadows her ability to choose. The other person, whether consciously or not, senses the shift. You can always feel when someone needs your approval, their energy gives it away. And once you sense it, you naturally begin to ration your attention, not out of cruelty, but because scarcity increases your value. People instinctively protect their autonomy by controlling access to themselves. Meanwhile, the validation seeker becomes anxious, adjusting ever more to avoid losing connection. What began as affection transforms into dependency, and dependency breeds imbalance. Why does this happen? Because validation is tied not just to desire, but to identity. When someone depends on another to confirm their worth, they lose their internal anchor. Their mood becomes externally regulated, and once that happens, they can be guided, nudged, influenced sometimes without realizing it. This is why strategists warn against revealing your hunger for approval. Those who need nothing cannot be compelled. Those who need validation can be led. So look closely at your own life. How many times have you allowed someone to gain influence simply because their attention felt gratifying? How many choices were made not because they were wise, but because they promised reassurance? There is a deeper truth hiding beneath all of this, one that few dare to confront. Validation can blind you, but absence can clarify everything. And in our next segment, you will learn why distance can wield more power than words ever could. Silence has always unsettled the human heart, for it exposes truths that words can easily conceal. Women, like all people, often trust communication as their weapon, believing that explanations, confessions, and conversations shape the outcome of desire. Yet history shows the opposite. Influence grows not from constant speech, but from deliberate absence. He who withdraws with intention governs the tempo of the interaction, while the one who fills the air with words unknowingly reveals everything. Consider the rulers of old who held court sparsely. Their rare appearances created tension, anticipation, and speculation. Each moment of absence magnified their presence. Their silence became a force, for people fear what they cannot read, and they respect what they cannot easily access. You may think this applies only to thrones and kingdoms, but human relationships operate under the same laws. The less one is available, the more meaning each gesture carries. Ask yourself this. When someone retreats slightly from you, do you not lean forward? When a reply takes time, does your mind not begin crafting stories to fill the void? Absence creates imagination, and imagination is far more powerful than any sentence you could speak. Words clarify, silence complicates, and complication captures attention. Women often believe that persuasion comes from explaining their feelings, clarifying misunderstandings, offering assurances, or laying their hearts bare. They hope transparency will earn security, yet transparency is a gift that must be earned, not offered freely. When given prematurely, it provides a detailed map of one's emotional landscape, allowing others to navigate it at their leisure. Scarcity, on the other hand, forces others to walk more carefully. There is a strategist's lesson hidden in the way people react to distance. When someone senses that your attention is not guaranteed, they begin to invest, not because they are manipulated, but because scarcity awakens value. People prize what they might lose, not what constantly reassures them. In this sense, absence is not coldness, it is clarity. It reveals who seeks you out when access is no longer effortless. Consider a modern scenario. A woman feels tension with someone she cares for. She tries to resolve it through long messages, heartfelt explanations, and emotional appeals. Yet the more she speaks, the less impact her words have. She begins to chase clarity, unaware that her urgency exposes her insecurity. Meanwhile, the other person, maintaining calm distance, holds the psychological high ground. His silence becomes a mirror reflecting her fears, while his presence, controlled and measured, becomes an object of rising importance. This dynamic is not inherently cruel. It simply reveals a truth. People listen more attentively to actions than to declaration. A single moment of withdrawal communicates more than paragraphs of confession. It forces reflection. It introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty is the seed of influence. Psychologists understand this as the power of intermittent reinforcement. When something is not consistently available, the mind clings to each instance with heightened interest. The strategist understands it as controlled unpredictability, never disappearing entirely, but never allowing predictability to dull the edge of intrigue. Those who rely too heavily on words become obvious. Those who master silence become enigmatic. So ask yourself again, what speaks louder, your explanations or your distance? Which travels farther, your voice or the space between your appearances? People may claim they value honesty and constant communication, but in truth, they are moved by mystery, scarcity, and the subtle tension of the unknown. Silence is not about withholding affection. It is about maintaining presence without surrendering depth. It is about allowing others to reveal their desires through their reactions. It is about refusing to be decoded too easily. When you understand this, you stop rushing to fill every pause and begin letting the pauses speak for you. But there is an even deeper layer to this psychological design, one that transforms perception entirely: the way people misread dominance as affection, and how this confusion reshapes every interaction that follows. They often mistake steadiness for devotion, composure for interest, and control for emotional depth. This confusion has shaped alliances, fueled illusions, and driven countless decisions toward unforeseen outcomes. To understand the next truth is to uncover the mechanism by which power disguises itself as passion. Prepare to see differently. Dominance is often misunderstood, especially by those who seek certainty in affection. Many women mistake composure for devotion, resilience for romantic investment, and confident restraint for emotional depth. But dominance, in its purest form, is not a confession of love. It is the quiet assertion of autonomy, the refusal to be governed by urgency or sentiment. Affection may soften a heart, but dominance governs the pace of every connection. Reflect on the great leaders of old who commanded loyalty without promising tenderness. Their presence was felt not because they proclaimed love, but because they carried themselves with an air of self-contained purpose. People gravitated toward them, imagining affection where none had been voiced, projecting desire onto silence simply because silence felt powerful. When you observe this dynamic, you begin to understand how easily dominance can be misread. Ask yourself this: how often have you interpreted someone's calmness as care? How often have you believed that a steady demeanor signaled emotional investment? The mind craves explanation, and where none is given, it creates meaning. Those who maintain composure become canvases for imagination. Their distance becomes depth. Their restraint becomes intrigue. And without realizing it, others begin drawing conclusions that were never intended. In relationships, the confusion manifests early. A woman meets someone who behaves with confidence measured, observant, unhurried. She sees stability and assumes affection. She sees control and imagines commitment. Yet she fails to question whether his steadiness is directed at her or simply a natural extension of his character. She projects intimacy onto posture, devotion onto patience. Psychologists call this the halo effect. One trait creates illusions about others. If someone appears strong, they are assumed to be caring. If someone appears composed, they are assumed to be devoted. But dominance is neutral. It seeks nothing. It reveals nothing. It simply holds its ground, allowing others to interpret it however their desires dictate. Consider a story from court politics. A noble commander, known for his discipline, rarely spoke of personal matters. Women in the court whispered that he was secretly romantic, his silence a sign of deep internal struggle, his stoic eyes hiding passion. They fell for the idea of him, not the reality. His dominance inspired fantasies that blossomed into assumptions, and he, uninterested in dispelling them, allowed those assumptions to shape alliances that served his ambitions. Such dynamics play out in modern life as well. Picture a woman drawn to someone who rarely reveals emotion. His presence is consistent but restrained. He does not chase, yet he never fully withdraws. She interprets this balance as emotional depth, believing it signals attachment. But what she reads as affection may simply be discipline, a life governed by intention rather than impulse. Why does this misunderstanding occur so easily? Because dominance mimics devotion in its steadiness. Both appear calm, both appear unwavering, but devotion moves toward the other. Dominance stands its ground. One gives, the other holds. When someone misreads this distinction, they surrender emotional authority without realizing it. They lean in while the dominant one remains centered, offering nothing that confirms or denies. This misinterpretation creates a powerful imbalance. The one who believes they have found affection begins investing emotionally. They offer vulnerability. They reveal desires. They shape their actions according to expectations that were never set. Meanwhile, the dominant one gains influence simply by maintaining neutrality. Their restraint becomes the rope the other slowly wraps around their own wrists. Ask yourself again, when you encounter someone who exudes calm strength, do you examine their intentions, or do you assume them? Do you look for evidence, or do you let your desire supply it? People often bind themselves to illusions because illusions feel safer than uncertainty. But illusions built on dominance inevitably collapse, leaving one party wondering why gravity seemed to shift beneath them. There is a deeper truth here, one that shapes far more interactions than people admit. When dominance is mistaken for affection, the dominant person becomes the axis around which the other starts to revolve, creating a subtle psychological orbit built not on love, but on interpretation. And yet, this is only one layer of the power dynamics at play. The next truth reveals something even more unsettling: how people's deepest emotional desire can be turned against them not through cruelty, but through their own unexamined assumptions. Prepare to see the final pattern unfold. In the end, influence is never taken by force. It is granted by those who do not notice they are giving it away. People reveal themselves through emotion. They surrender leverage through validation. They bend under silence. And they mistake dominance for devotion. Control does not require cruelty. It requires observation. It requires patience. It requires the discipline to let others expose their own desires while you guard yours. Ask yourself, who truly holds power? The one who speaks endlessly, or the one who watches in silence? The one who chases certainty, or the one who lets others chase them? Human nature nature's predictable, and the one who understands these patterns shapes the outcome long before the other realizes a game was even being played. If these insights sharpened your understanding of power and psychology, tell me your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more Machiavellian strategies and deeper explorations into human behavior. And share this video with someone who thinks they understand influence but has yet to see how quietly it actually works.